In Genesis, the scene is deceptively simple. God forms a human figure from the dust, then breathes into nostrils the breath of life. From that single intimate action, the text announces a radical claim. What transforms inert matter into a living human is not only a biological process, but a divine gift. This brief passage contains a dense theology and a profound anthropology. It frames the human person as a creature of two realities, the material and the spiritual, woven together by one act of divine intimacy. Exploring that union opens windows into religious meaning, moral consequence, and even modern scientific reflection. This analysis unfolds in four movements. First, it reads the biblical scene closely and teases out its linguistic and symbolic freight. Second, it traces the theological implications, what the breath says about God, personhood, and the image of God. Third, it places the biblical motif in conversation with science, what biology explains and what it cannot capture. Finally, it draws pastoral and existential conclusions. Why the breath matters for how we live, mourn, create, and steward life. 1. A close reading: dust, breath, and the threshold of personhood. Genesis gives two complementary accounts of human origins. In the first, humanity is created in the divine image and given dominion. In the second, the more intimate narrative, the human is shaped from dust and animated by God's breath. The Hebrew word most often translated as breath or spirit is ruach, a polyvalent term meaning wind, breath, spirit, or life force. Its multiplicity is the point. The same term describes the creative wind moving over the waters, the animating breath in the human nostrils, and the spirit that later fills prophets and leaders. Thus, Ruach connects cosmic beginnings, human vitality, and divine presence in a single semantic thread. The detail matters. The Creator molds, then breathes. Molding suggests intimate craftsmanship. Breathing suggests relational endowment. The human is not an accident of dust animated by blind process, nor a mere bag of biological functions. The human is the point at which matter and meaning meet. The breath is not an auxiliary phenomenon. It is the decisive moment that defines personhood. Before the breath, the formed figure is not fully human. After it, the figure is living, a nefesh cheya, a living soul. The text locates human dignity precisely at the threshold where God's creative will intersects physical reality. Symbolically, breath sits at the interface of inner and outer. Breath is both the body's biochemical exchange and the invisible sign of life's interior. It is audible and invisible, measurable and ineffable. Genesis uses that ambiguity to say something large. Human life is both biologically real and metaphysically gifted. The breath is a sacramental gesture, simple but revelatory. One small inhalation that consecrates the creature as a bearer of God's presence. 2. Theological implications: Imago Dei, freedom, and relationality. If the breath of God is the moment of animation, then the human is essentially a creature created for relationship. The breath is a divine impartation, a sharing of life rather than mere manufacture. From a theological standpoint, several consequences follow. First, the Imago Dei is relational. The image of God in humanity is not primarily intellectual capacity or moral aptitude, but rooted in participation. The creature participates in God's life by receiving God's breath. This grounds human dignity in gift and relation rather than in utility or function. Every human person, regardless of ability or status, is a bearer of that divine breath. Second, freedom and moral responsibility flow from breath. To be animated by God is to be given a capacity not only to live biologically but to choose morally. Breath unveils not only life, but a capacity for conscience, the very possibility of discerning right and wrong, affirming or rejecting the source of life. That is why later biblical narratives link spiritual life to obedience, worship, and ethical formation. The breath confers capacity. Human history shows how that capacity can be honored or misused. Third, created unity of body and soul resists dualism. Genesis presents no dichotomy that despises matter. The body is not a prison for the soul. Earth and breath fuse. Human flourishing requires that the material conditions of life be cared for: food, shelter, community, because these are the substrate of the breath's expression. Conversely, the spiritual cannot be reduced to a physiological process. The breath implies meaning that transcends measurement. Fourth, sacredness of the everyday. Breath sanctifies ordinary matter. A field, a tree, a human pulse. These become loci of encounter with the divine. Worship, then, is not retreat from the world, but reorientation to this sacramental texture of life. Every inhalation could be a reminder of dependence on the Creator. 3. Conversation with science. What biology explains, and what it doesn't. Modern biology offers rich accounts of life's mechanics. Respiration is the exchange of gases powering metabolism. Mitochondria harvest energy. Neural networks correlate with consciousness. These discoveries are exhilarating. They explain how life operates and provide the means to heal, extend, or comfort living systems. Yet even at its most eloquent, biology does not fully answer the existential questions Genesis raises. Complementary, not antagonistic. The best posture is not to treat science and Genesis as adversaries, but as distinct modes of human inquiry. Science maps processes. Genesis names purpose. They answer different questions: the how and the why. For instance, respiration's chemical pathway explains how oxygen sustains ATP production. Genesis names the gift that made the body into a person. The two registers can be mutually illuminating. Scientific insights into fetal development, neonatal respiration, or brain injury invite ethical reflection that the Genesis motif anticipates by centering the breath as threshold of personhood. Limits of reductionism. A purely reductionist position that says consciousness is only neuron firing leaves several puzzles unresolved. Why is there subjective experience? Why is there moral longing? Why do humans speak in symbols, create art, and ask why there is anything at all? Such hard problems press for more than biochemical description. Genesis places these existential features within a narrative. They are consequences of a being animated by an originating breath who invites relationship, emergence, and gift. Contemporary philosophy of mind sometimes appeals to emergence. Complex systems produce novel properties. The breath motif fits this language. When certain material conditions, a brain of sufficient complexity, a living organism, are present, new capacities emerge. Capacities that in the biblical frame are understood as participation in divine life. Whether one names the emergent property soul, consciousness, or relational personhood, the Genesis intuition remains that such emergence is not impersonal. It is a moment of divine bestowal. Ethical stakes of scientific practice. Technologies that intervene in life, genetic editing, life support decisions, reproductive technologies, must be negotiated within a vision that recognizes both biological complexity and sacred dignity. The breath motif provides an ethic. Life's sanctity derives from divine gift, so scientific power must be ordered to care, heal, and sustain, not to instrumentalize or commodify human persons. 4. Pastoral and existential consequences. Breath as a way of life. A reading of Genesis that centers the breath has immediate practical consequences for how individuals and communities live. Worship and liturgy. Many spiritual traditions have recognized breath as a pathway into prayer and presence. Breath practices, silent breathing, counted prayer, contemplative inhalations, are not mere exercises in mental health. They can be sacramental rhythms, reminding believers of dependency and divine proximity. The biblical breath grounds such practices in theology. Breathing is not just physiology, it is a continual reception of life, care for embodied existence. If the body is the locus of divine breath, then caring for bodies matters religiously. Healthcare, palliative care, social policies that ensure food, shelter, and dignity become theological imperatives. Respect for the body is also respect for the divine image it bears, mourning and hope. Death, in the biblical perspective, is framed as a tragic rupture of the breath's continuity. Breathing ceases and the living soul departs. Yet Genesis also suggests hope. God's breath is not only first act animation, but the promise of renewal. Liturgically and pastorally, this offers resources for grieving communities, affirming loss while anchoring hope in God's creative and redeeming promise. Human vocation, stewardship, creativity, and praise. The breath confers not merely survival, but vocation. Humans are entrusted with cultivating the garden, naming the creatures, shaping culture and art. That vocation is inherently collaborative with God. Human creativity is a continuation, in limited form, of divine creativity. How cultures design, steward ecology, shape economies, and produce art reveal whether the breath's gift is being honored. Ethics of difference and equality. Genesis' account of breath does not make the image of God a privilege of some and exclusion of others. Every individual receives the breath, thus equality of dignity is a theological non-negotiable. At the same time, Genesis values differentiation, male-female, roles, relational patterns, as part of ordered life. The challenge is to hold equality of dignity together with meaningful distinctions in function without slipping into domination or devaluation. 5. A final reflection. Breath as invitation. The breath in Genesis is an invitation. It invites a posture of awe, to see life not as a set of resources to exploit, but as a shared gift in which human beings participate. It invites ethical prudence in science, to use knowledge to heal and not to objectify. It invites social policy that cares for the vulnerable, reflecting the ethical implications of being bearers of God's breath. And it invites personal spirituality, to treat each inhalation as a moment of reception, each exhalation as an offering. This invitation also reframes human longing. When the self seeks fullness in power, image, or autonomy, it misreads the breath. When it seeks communion with the giver, it finds home. The breath of life is not a private possession, but a shared reality that makes community possible. Family, neighbor, the stranger, the poor, the created order itself. The Genesis image refuses easy reduction and resists facile cynicism. It confronts the modern world's temptations to reduce life to mechanics, to idolize technology, to privatize meaning, and offers instead an ancient, stubbornly beautiful vision. Life is a gift, breathed into dust by a presence that calls us into relationship.